Hey guys, welcome back. Today is going to be a super fun day because right behind me are my sweet potato containers. So this will be my third year, I think, maybe fourth, but I think it's 3 years. 3 years growing sweet potatoes in containers, and I think you're going to be excited as I am to see the results of what's inside. I think they did much better this year. Last year was fairly good, but this year I think they're going to be really big. I can already see them popping out of the soil. Wait as long as possible, but they're just popping out. I mean, we got to get those harvested. So let's go have a look and see. It is the next morning after that intro, and look, the deer came along last night and took off most of those leaves. Let's go back. This is May 19th when I planted those sweet potato slips. You can see by those pictures. Here we are. Leaves are mostly gone. Deer love sweet potatoes, the vines, and also rabbits. And I have both come through my yard all the time. But check out this black-eyed Susan vine. This is a keeper plant for me that I try to grow every single year. Absolutely love it. Next year, we will start those indoors early so that they're flowering sooner for me. Just some more images of the vines. Here we go. So to get things going, we're going to have to go to the end, work our way back, and start cutting those vines towards the planters. You can see a lot of them actually put roots down into the soil, so it is possible there could be sweet potatoes down in there. And this is kind of an example of the process that happens with the tubers underground. If I left these here in the ground longer, sweet potatoes will begin to grow under the soil level underground. So here's another image of this beautiful vine before I relocate it. I'm going to attempt to relocate it, and there we go. I will say, I know that days later it looks horrible, but I still have hope it'll bounce back and look beautiful one more time before first frost. Okay, so now that the vines have been cut at the soil level, we're going to start harvesting these sweet potatoes. And my daughter didn't get to help me last fall. She was really disappointed. She loves to watch potato and sweet potato harvest. So she's going to help me with filming with the first planter. And then the second planter, she's actually going to put the gloves on and harvest those potatoes for herself. She's never got to do that yet, so she's really excited. So here's container number one. And you'll notice throughout the video, I'm going to fast forward through some of this because that would make for a super long video if I did not. So these containers are pretty hefty duty and they can tolerate being knocked over like that and kind of bent out of place. The containers I used last year actually cracked. So I knew when I bought some new containers, they needed to be pretty hefty duty. So I'm just starting at the top and kind of working my way through, pulling out those sweet potatoes. So I planted on May 19th, which was Mother's Day this year. And I harvested on October 6th, which is the exact same day I did last year. I went back and looked at my pictures. I think next year, note to self, plant 2 weeks earlier, harvest 2 weeks later. So we're right at close to 5 months. It's not quite enough time. I think we need to get over that 5-month point to get bigger sweet potatoes. Also, I do wonder, maybe I crowded with too many sweet potato slips, and maybe that's why some of these sweet potatoes were not able to grow as far as more round. Some of them are really long and kind of lean, but there are some keepers, definitely. And I will use all of these sweet potatoes. I'm not going to waste any of them. If they're long and skinny, they're going to be sweet potato fries. I will keep some in the pantry so we have slips for next spring. And that's what I've done for the last 2 years. I just let one kind of, hang out in the pantry, and then here comes late winter, early spring. They're starting to grow those little sprouts, those little eyes, kind of like a regular potato does. And then we're going to encourage that sweet potato. And I don't know, did I make a video on making sweet potato slips? If I did not this past year, I will definitely do it in the spring. My daughters want me to try out purple potatoes next year, so I may do one container of this traditional sweet potato that we've got. I think it might be Covington, and then I might do a container of purple sweet potatoes. If you're new to my channel, you may be wondering, why in the world are you harvesting sweet potatoes out of a container? Why did you not plant those in the ground? And Several reasons. One is the deer and rabbits. Another is that I live in a suburban HOA neighborhood, and I can't just devote, even though I'd like to, and I kind of try to, devote everything to a gardening bed and a gardening space to grow food. Um, and I have a lot of critters underground as well, like voyles. So this is my third year in a row to have sweet potatoes in containers. I think they do fairly well considering. Um, I do have a section of sweet potatoes in the ground. That flower bed that you just saw kind of in the background, it's just for decoration, but there's quite a big possibility that there could be some sweet potatoes underground. But the vines in that bed got eaten so much by the deer. It was really hard to keep them off. So that's why. I think it keeps a cleaner product, and it's just easier for me to dump it out on a tarp at the end of the season, and that's why I do it. So now we're moving on to container 2, and this is where my daughter got to actually harvest for the first time. You can see the sweet potatoes off to the left there were the ones we got out of container 1. I had a feeling container 2 was going to have bigger sweet potatoes because it got just a wee bit more sun, and I could just tell that it was a heavier container. There was bigger tubers kind of popping out of the soil. But you're going to see here in a second, there was an issue with container 2. I really didn't find any creepy crawlies in container 1, but when we got here to container 2, ants, a whole colony all through the entire container. So we don't realize it yet. And you can see she's having fun trying to get them out. They were tight. Like, this container was jam-packed with tubers, those sweet potatoes. And I do wonder if they had more space, if I hadn't planted so many. I think I only planted 6 or 7 slips. Maybe they would have grown a little better, a little wider. So she's kind of struggling to get them out. Eventually, what we're going to do is flip that container and then have everything out on the tarp. And that's when we're going to discover those ants. And you're going to see them here in just a second. So you can see we got a few, not half bad little sweet potatoes. And homegrown sweet potatoes are really, really delicious. And you're wondering maybe, how do you cure them? Do you cure them like regular white, russet potatoes? It is a little bit different. And so at the end of this video, I'm going to talk to you about how I do it and show you. But again, here she was struggling to get those sweet potatoes out. And so now we have the container flipped out, and you're going to see the ants. I think I see them immediately. I don't know. Yes, she points them out to me, and then I kind of come up here, and you can see the tunneling. So the ant colonies, they got all these tunnels going everywhere. They were definitely angry with me for flipping that container. So this was, I think, Saturday evening. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? It's getting close to evening. I don't want the soil damp all night from me spraying it with a water hose. So I just covered up this pile of sweet potatoes and soil with my tarp. And then the next morning, which is now, here in the video, we're just kind of doing an excavation here of trying to get those sweet potatoes out and work around the ants. And it actually became such an issue eventually that I did have to start spraying. So we'd spray the sweet potatoes, take a break, hope that the ants would leave. My hope was that they would have left that night, that I left them uncovered under the tarp. They weren't in their container anymore. I thought, you know what? Why don't those ants just take the night, pack up, leave? Obviously, they did not. They were still there the next morning. So I did have to resort to using the water hose, and we just kind of used that shovel, kind of work those sweet potatoes out, and we were able to work around the ants that way. And that's a pretty good sweet potato right there too, it looks like. Eventually my daughter did get kind of tired of working through the sweet potato, and taking the breaks to spray and then come back a little bit later. And then I ended up finishing the job, and I do reuse all of that soil. It goes right back into those containers because it's possible, unlikely, but possible maybe something might grow next year from those roots. And look at this hornet nest. This was in our tree, and we thought we were going to have to do something about it, and then something happened. Like overnight, something attacked that nest and broke it apart, and then there were no wasps in there. So I don't know if some kind of big bird wanted to eat all those wasps, but they were gone. The nest was on the ground. So here we are, finishing up the last lot of those sweet potatoes that were kind of farther down. I will say my sweet potatoes grew farther down this year than the year before, because I think I fertilized them better, and I think that just made all the difference. So now all the soil is back into the containers, and I'm going to get those prepped and ready for a fall display, and you'll see that in the next video coming up. But here is our harvest for 2024. That is a huge bowl. I'm trying to kind of show you the size kind of with my hand, but perspective is off, so I put my glasses there. You can kind of see some of those sweet potatoes are not half bad. There are a lot of long skinny ones, but like I said, those will become sweet potato fries. So it was fun. I'm glad that my daughter got to experience this. She doesn't like to be on camera, even her voice, so I have to voice over the whole thing, and I respect that completely. We just had a great time. I'm glad she's taken some interest in. So now that the sweet potatoes are harvested, what I'm going to do, keep them in the garage just a couple days, so that if there are any residual ants, they can crawl under my garage door. And then I'm going to use a clean old rag like this and kind of brush off the dirt. I'm going to make sure there's no moisture in here. Maybe I'll put them on the table, give them some space after I get all the excess dirt brushed off. And then after I feel like they're nice and dry, I'm going to put them in a tote. What I want to do is keep about, let's say 8 days of 80 degrees. Slightly humid, but not too humid. We don't want to grow mold. We just want to kind of cure these sweet potatoes. So that's kind of the general rule. 8 days-ish, 80 degrees. And I don't have a place in my home to keep that temperature, so that is why I'm going to use that tote. I'll see how it does here in the garage, but I may have to move that tote out, maybe probably put it by my van, so as I'm coming and going I can check on them. Maybe not in direct sun, but in the shade near my van. They should be about that 80 degree mark, but I'll keep an eye on it, and that's all you have to do. Once they have had that 8 to 10 days, then you can put them in your pantry, cool, dark, dry place, and they should do well. And then what will happen is you'll have, probably like has happened for me the last couple years, a sweet potato that sprouts early spring. You start growing the slips on that, and then you've got free sweet potato slips to plant next summer. So that's how it works. All right, guys, talk to you soon. Hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful gardening week. Bye.